In this lesson, we'll learn about understanding variable scope. In our earlier lesson on variables, we talked about global variables and local variables, with local variables performing much faster than global variables. Let's create a local variable called foo and set it equal to a string outside foo. Then we'll print this variable. Now, if we ran this, we would print to the terminal outside foo. The thing is, we can also create the same variable within a function. And within this function, we'll create a local variable called foo, and we'll set it equal to inside foo. Now what happens here is this variable is local to just this function chunk. So if we set this function to print foo, this will print inside foo. So let's actually see what happens with just this bit of code. So we just have outside foo because we haven't actually executed the function fooit. Call that. Then we see outside foo and inside foo. Okay, well let's change the position of fooit to go before the print. Let's see if that affects the foo variable. Inside foo and outside foo. So you can see that the foo variable that's declared on line 1 is not affected by the declaration of foo on line 4, and that's because we're using the keyword local, and that scopes a variable to a chunk, and here it's the function chunk. We can also scope variables to conditional statements, and we'll do that by creating an argument for fooit, and then within that function, we'll say that if argument exists, then within this new chunk, this is the conditional chunk, we'll create a local variable called foo and set it equal to conditional foo. Then we'll print that variable. So we've got 3 different print statements, all printing foo, but foo is different depending on what chunk it exists in, either in the conditional statement, that's lines 6 through 9, the function outside of the conditional statement, that's lines 4 through 12, or the broadest scope, which is the document at line 1. So now we'll call fooit, but we'll pass an argument. We'll just pass a boolean. And we'll print. And we get all 3 versions, conditional, inside, and outside. And if you're curious, if we didn't pass the argument, we would just get the outside and inside. Well, inside and outside because we've called the function first and then we've printed the outside. The benefit of knowing about variable scope is that you can increase your performance by just using local variables in the chunks where they're necessary. There's no need to expose variables to the global space because you're just creating a lot of variables that the machine will have to look through and it will just perform slower and slower over time. Throughout our lessons, I will point out scope when it's important, so don't worry if this is a bit confusing for now. It's better understood when used in a particular meaningful context. This ends our lesson on understanding variable scope.